average of about 30 times a game, which kept the other team off the field.
Yeah, it gets so overlooked when people talk about Manning and Manning was the guy speaking at the parade, but yeah, it was all on defense. The interesting aspect from the standpoint of the Titans, what about all those picks? How much better did the Titans get through 4 rounds of the draft?
Well, listen, this is a team, I want to say, 3 times in 4 years now, Seth? They've selected an offensive lineman in the first round. Taylor Lewan a couple of years ago, Chance Warmack, and now, they get Jack Conklin. I thought getting Derrick Henry was fascinating, but it shows you what the mindset of the team will be this year with him and DeMarco Murray. You got a Heisman Trophy winner and a 2014 NFL Offensive Player of the Year in your backfield. I mean, this is a team the last 2 years that has failed to run for 1,400 yards as a team. Forget an individual. Okay, I mean, and this was a team.
That's pretty remarkable.
I mean, that's pretty horrible. Okay, so you wonder why you win 5 games. You wonder why your quarterback's getting beat up. And now they're going to also be in the era with Dick LeBeau. Now that Ray Horton is back in Cleveland, Dick LeBeau has taken over the defense. I mean, he was there as a coach last year, but it's going to be his style of defense. They've got some nice veterans there. Plug in some of these new guys that they bring in. I'm really curious to see Marcus Mariota and Dorial Green-Beckham as a tandem, as a young tandem. This is, and listen, that division is pretty much up for grabs as far as I'm concerned. Andrew Luck comes back. And listen, Indianapolis seems like they're kind of getting the hint set. Look at their draft. Offensive linemen and defensive players. Okay, I was just writing about that with the Bears. Look at how much defense has gone in this draft, especially in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, when you look at it from a overview, I don't see it round pick by pick, but when you take a look at a draft round, you see the emphasis on defense. A couple of you want to have an early prediction on Mr. Irrelevant?
Oh no, I usually fall into that category myself every year.
I love that. I just love that. That's the guy that goes on the local news. Like it's the networks don't do that. It's like the 6 o'clock news in whatever town. It's like, hey, guess who Mr. Irrelevant is? They make such
absolutely.
a big deal about it.
Well, it was funny. I'm one of those guys who's obviously been covering the league for a while and also been a fan of the league for a while. So when Mr. Irrelevant was like the last pick in the 17th or the 12th round, no, I should say the 12th round. I don't know if it was ever during the 17th. And he was like the 400 and something. I mean, that's irrelevant. In fact, he wouldn't even be Mr. Irrelevant. He'd be Mr. Obscure. Okay. Now it's a little different. This back in the old drafts, and we've been doing the 7-round draft since 1994. But I always kind of feel for the guy who gets picked next to last. It's like you don't even get the booby prize, and this guy gets a parade and a week out in California.
That's not bad. That's pretty good. Very nice. I will talk to you soon, Russell. We have off the air conversations to have as well.
Indeed, sir. All right. Enjoy the rest of the draft,
my friend. You got it. Russell Baxter from Bleacher Report here on NBC Sports Radio. I'm Seth Everett, in for Brian Weber on NBC Sports Radio. All right, back here on NBC Sports Radio. Seth Everett in for Brian Weber. Last 2 picks from the Kansas City Chiefs. First one they got from the Niners. They took guard Parker Ehlinger from Cincinnati. And then they took cornerback Eric Murray in a pick from the Buccaneers through the Bears. Eric Murray is a cornerback out of Minnesota. Let's welcome in from the Eagles Wire, USA Today, an NFL draft analyst. Has been having a great time these last few days. And he is on the line with us now, Teron Davenport. Teron, thanks so much for doing this. How's the draft been for you so far?
Oh, the draft's been very interesting. I appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a lot of surprises.
Yeah, a lot of surprises. There's a lot of things that, a number of us suggested and a number of us looked at. Let's start with the controversy. A player, finds out that there's a picture of him smoking something with a face mask or something on Twitter, and all of a sudden his stock dropped. Do you really believe that teams were going to draft him and backed off because of something on Twitter?
I don't think it was just that. There were some other things that were surfacing as far as possibilities of him taking money from coaches, as well as an internal family problem that he's got going on. So there's issues, and I mean, when you're drafting a guy in the top 10, I mean, you want a prospect that's pretty clean, and unfortunately, Tunsil doesn't have everything together off the field. I wish him the best, but you know, it caused him to drop. Maybe this has taught him a lesson, and he'll be able to you know, reorganize things and take advantage of the potential that he has.
Well, if he can, and you know that's a big if, and you're absolutely right. That's a bigger thing. But if he can, do you think that he's a more talented player than most of the guys picked ahead of him?
Definitely. You look at the mix of size and strength that he brings and athleticism. He is a ultimate prospect as a left tackle. You know, he's a guy that doesn't excel as much in run blocking, but you look at his ability to reset his feet anytime someone, you know, will give him that outside rush and spin back inside. He's fully equipped to handle the new age pass rushers that you're seeing, you know, these athletic guys coming off the edge. So he's definitely capable of it. But like I said, you know, it's off the field. I mean, football is more than just actually playing the game. You have to have things together on all facets. And I think that's something that he can get to eventually.
We're talking to Teron Davenport, USA Today. The blockbuster trade in which the Titans trade the top pick in the draft, the Titans got a ton. But it was hard to break down that trade when it was just numbers. Now that there's some players filling out, how did the Rams make out by trading up to get Jared Goff, and then we'll do the Titans after?
Well, I mean, you look at the Rams, I think regardless, they made out because they got their guy. They got the quarterback situation settled for now, what appears to be settled. And Jared Goff, I think, is a really good match for what they're going to look to do. He's experienced with coming in and taking over a team and leading them, helping the turnaround. So that's something to definitely take into account. Plenty of snaps in college. And I think it's still – the jury's still out on how this whole thing is going to pan out for both teams because, I mean, these guys haven't even, you know, put on an NFL uniform yet. So it's hard to say who benefited and who didn't. But just looking at the grand scheme of things, the Rams got their guy. You know, they attempted to get a quarterback in Bradford before. That didn't work out, you know, when they took him first. So they're going to reset and see what happens.
We're talking to Teron Davenport, USA Today. You're in Philadelphia. You do the Eagles site. And, boy, the Eagles, it is great to be on Philadelphia Sports Radio. I spent a good chunk of time on Philadelphia Sports Radio. It's a fun place. The Eagles traded Byron Maxwell, Kiki Alonso, the 2017 first-round pick, 2 picks this year, a second-rounder in 2 years, to draft Carson Wentz. That he better turn out. I mean, I have not read one place that doesn't have huge misgivings about that pick. Yeah,
I tell you, in talking to Carson Wentz in Chicago at the Play 60, and then also yesterday had his presser and his conference call, there's some things that stand out to me about him. I'll say this: if he could play as well as he could talk, the Eagles have an outstanding future. But just looking at his game in particular, 2 areas that I really felt he needed to improve were his deep ball accuracy and also just the ball security in the pocket. And ironically, these are 2 areas that he said that he's worked at. And I think just the fact that he could identify what it is that he has to work on and you know, work hard to improve it, I think that's a starting point. But then you have this small school stigma that's placed upon him. And I tell you what, it's actually an advantage. Going to North Dakota State for him is an advantage because he's coming out of a pro system, and he's more pro-ready as far as what he's had to do as a quarterback in college than a lot of these other quarterbacks coming out. I mean, he had free reign at the line of scrimmage. He had to was able to check plays, can change protections, was able to, you know, check to quarterback power and things like that, you know, when he sees the opportunity to run the football. I think he's ready from that side of things. It's just going to really be being able to adjust to the speed of the game. That's where he has to be able to make that adjustment.
We're talking to Teron Davenport for a couple more moments here. What do you look for in terms of the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round? You know, you hear all these players, and, you know, in this day and age of multimedia, you know, there's video on all these guys, and, you know, we're familiar with a lot of them. But is there something that a team can address? Do you look for best player available? Do you have specific needs based on specific teams? What's your talk on the later rounds?
Well, really what happens before the later rounds start, the teams go back and they regroup their board. You know, they kind of reset it. They take a look back at what it is that they still need. You look at a team like the Eagles, obviously running back is a position. So now you go back and you look and you might shift the running back up as opposed to, you know, a quarterback. And now your board shifts, so that allows you to go best player available that matches needs. And I think the good teams, such as the Ravens, you know, the Patriots, these are teams that address needs later on in the draft. And a lot of times you'll see them get guys in on day 3 that end up being starters. And that's what makes teams like that not have to go after free agents. So it's a combination of the two. You got to look at your board horizontally, reset it each day. And I think that's what teams have done. And you'll see a lot of guys going today that drop, like an Andrew Billings, you know, a guy like a Colby Listenby, you know, Paul Perkins. These are all really good players that are going to come off the board soon.
You know, it's interesting. As far as quarterbacks are concerned, this isn't considered, you know, to be one of the top draft yet. You did see 4 quarterbacks drafted on the first day. Do you see impacts? I just look at it as there's a great need for quarterbacks, but I've said this about the NFL, and you tell me if you disagree with this. I just don't think there are enough quarterbacks to go around. There are 30 teams in the National Football League. There are probably 18 good quarterbacks. And there are teams that are literally just hanging on, hoping to find one.
You know, I'm going to say this. There are teams that are afraid to take a chance on guys. You look at what Seattle did with Russell Wilson. And I'm not saying that all these guys out here are Russell Wilson, because he's a very unique guy. But I tell you what, we never would have gotten to see him if Seattle didn't take that chance. And you look at someone like a Trevon Boykin. Obviously, he had the situation in San Antonio, but he can make any throw that you want. He's a guy that was one of the premier playmakers in college. Why is he not even being talked about as a NFL quarterback? You look at a guy like a Vernon Adams, who just was outstanding at the East-West Shrine game practices and in the game. And he's somebody that we're not talking about until possibly 6th round, 7th round. A lot of these analysts are saying he's a Canadian League quarterback. You got a guy like a Dalen Williams, who is very much like Russell Wilson. He's out of Dartmouth. He's very efficient with the football. He's one of the most accurate as far as interception to turnover ratio players ever at Dartmouth. And, you know, he's a guy that no one's talking about. So I think there's quarterbacks, there's talent, but it's just these teams are always looking for that prototypical 6'4" to 6'6" big passer that supposedly has a big arm, but a lot of these guys, like a Nate Sudfeld, are hesitant to throw the ball when they have the opportunity and are not accurate. So I think it's a combination. I mean, there is a shortage of quarterback, but it's almost created by these teams being scared to go for these guys who aren't prototypical prospects.
Teron, what's the best way people can find out your analysis?
Oh, you can check me out at @TDavenport_NFL. That's my Twitter, and then check out footballgameplan.com. We have plenty of stuff on there, interviews and analysis, and any Eagles information you want, Eagles Wire. It's eagleswire.usatoday.com.
Well, I will say this, you know, people like yourself, you don't sleep during the draft. You sleep like Monday. And the fact that they've spread it out to 3 days just means that much more coverage.
Well, I mean, when you love to do it, it's not work. So I don't mind it. I mean, it's a long process, but it's great. I love looking at all the prospects, and, I mean, this is a lot of fun.
That's a great attitude. Thanks so much for doing this, man. We'll talk to you soon.
No problem. Anytime. Take care.
All right, Teron Davenport from USA Today and the Eagles Wire, and you heard all the different places that he has joined so far, and he's been writing a ton. We'll talk to Clarence Hill, Cowboy beat writer from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, in about an hour from now. Russell Baxter from Bleacher Report will chime in. We've got much more on the draft. I'll fill in the rest of the sports. We'll talk